Okay, welcome. Here we are in the next unit of the architecture physical science curriculum that we've been going through. Now, what we're going to be covering this week will not just be involving architecture. There'll be a fair bit involving metallurgy technologies and not just for the purposes of talking about metallurgy, but also because a lot of those technologies changed the way architecture was done and had big impacts on what the kind of changes we see in the structure. So I want you to try and make those connections. So what this is going to focus on, let me just show you. This will focus on later castles and palaces and medieval metal technologies. So the whole idea here is these castles and palaces are going to be castles that are from the later medieval and even into the Renaissance period, and a lot of them will have been restored. So you'll notice they look significantly more functional than a lot of the ones we looked at last time. In terms of where they are, most of the ones we're going to be looking at are going to be found in Germany and France. The ones from last time were in mostly in Britain. So it's a little bit of a change there. But you will notice some similarities. Like, you'll definitely notice that they're the same type of building. So make note of that. Make note of how are they similar to past castles, and then how are they different from past castles as well? Because there are quite a few changes as well as some similarities. And also think about the similarities they bear to cathedrals. We looked at cathedrals for a reason, and they're a major feature of medieval architecture. And think about how these later castles and palaces are different from cathedrals, but also how they're similar. Because there are some similarities to be noticed there. Now, we are going to the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to be looking at how medieval church bells were made. And this one will be something a little bit different. Now, the idea here that I want you to keep in mind is that it turns out that a lot of the changes that you see in how castles were constructed and ultimately the purposes they were constructed for, they can be traced back to this improvement in the ability to make medieval church bells, which was, of course, kind of necessitated by bigger and bigger cathedrals that we saw in last week's curriculum. So there's that connection. I really want this to focus on how are these church bells made. Okay. Now, again, this will be different because it won't involve a slideshow. What it will actually involve is you looking at a few videos that are actually, there's not much dialogue in them, but the dialogue that is present is in German. So unless you speak German, you'll have to kind of figure out how the church bells are being made just from the videos. Now, the worksheet will give you a little bit more specific instructions about how to do that, as well as the Pocket Lab notebook. But you can see the instructions if you check that out. Now, I want you, as you're observing this, be thinking about the connection that church bells have to castles castles and palaces without walls. Okay, because that's one of the main changes that I think you'll notice. Next thing we'll get into is a sort of another type of metalwork that will be cannon casting. Similarities and differences to casting church bells. And then I want you, this process will be a little bit more difficult. So I'll want you to be looking at what do you think the purpose of each of these steps is. Now, it's going to be the same video maker that did the church bell, but they are a little bit more difficult to follow. So I would actually suggest turning captions on for this one. The dialogue is in German, but the captions will be in English, so you can read those and figure out a little bit more there. Okay. Now there's a couple of additional videos that are about other hobbyists casting cannon. And I want you to be thinking about, how is casting a cannon more difficult than casting a church bell? And what are some of the dangers involved in this process of, making cannons and making bells? So keep that in mind and be looking for that as you go through your observations. All right, that will be it for the introduction. I hope you enjoy this unit. Take care, and I'll see you next time.